I am Chris.
And I'm Matt.
Welcome to Roleplay Chat.
We are two game masters who can't stop talking about role-playing games.
And today we talk about building objective and how it can really help you elevate your game and make your action and intention really powerful.
And as always, we're going to focus in on the roleplay elements so that we can get better at roleplay together.
So building objectives in your game, maybe it sounds obvious. We're going to detail why it's a good thing and why you can do a little bit more than you think with those objectives.
This is going to give you the foundation for your roleplay to really elevate it further. Get into some advanced roleplay techniques like preluding or motivation roleplay, or even being gift-giving with your other players and NPCs. So if that's something that you think is up your alley, I'd suggest you subscribe to our channel.
So let's get into it. What do we need? What do we mean when we talk about objective? We will focus first on having long-term objective. Long-term objective weirdly could seem like far away down the road, but if you can fix that from the beginning, it's going to give you like a continuous thread from the beginning to actually achieving, or maybe not achieving, this objective. Maybe, Matt, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. So this long-term objective should be something that your character is attempting to do. And that's going to mean it's going to influence their actions. It's going to influence the things they say when they're talking to NPCs and talking to other players. And it's basically going to be their purpose, their main driving force throughout the game. We suggest that you set this main long-term objective after having played a couple of games so that your feet have just taken a step into the pool of what's going to be your next big story arc, your next campaign, and you get to meet the characters, you get to meet the plot that's happening, and you can come up with an objective that complements it well and is kind of in the same direction.
Be careful not to mix what I would call maybe motivation with objective. Motivation of, like, let's say you want to find your sister is a great motivation, but here we're talking about an objective, something very concrete that, like Matt said, will educate how you're going to act and what you're going to actually do. So instead of finding my sister, it might be joining this organization who have a lot of contacts in order later to find my sister. All right. So that is more an objective. It's more of a short-term objective, but just keep in mind that it should be actionable.
So when you're building this objective, this longer-term objective, you're going to try to strive to complete it in somewhere between 10 and 20 actual in-game games. So not, I want to become the ruler of the empire, but like Chris said, maybe joining an organization to find my sister is a good example. Something that you could also use to build this objective is other circumstances. Things like the events that are going on in the game, information your character is aware of, or maybe other characters that you've met in the past, or other elements of your character's past.
Yeah, and something maybe to mention here is all of this is really great and is often based on your game master, right? So talk to your game master about what kind of objective would make sense at their game. You may also want to consider the party, what the other characters are doing. So you should also talk to them. This is not created in a bubble, right? All the affiliation you have are part of this world. This is a good starting point for great objective.
So to be able to understand this concept of giving your characters objectives, we're going to take one example and go through the whole process with you. So let's start off with Otis the Rogue. Otis the Rogue's long-term goal is to get vengeance, to kill the Baron of Rivenhall, because the Baron failed to protect Otis's hometown from an invasion.
This is the long term. Now we need to take this long term and break it down, because it's too long, it's too big. So we'll break it down into chunks of short-term objective. So what you do is you want to have the immediate action to realize something that will go towards this long-term objective. And this is the thing that's going to really educate what you're going to act upon in roleplay.
Think of it as one step towards the long-term goal. And this short-term objective should be achievable in a handful of games. And let's go back to our example. Otis the Rogue, his first short-term goal could be to find where the Baron is.
And then talking to your game master again, you can build that in the story. And maybe after some missions, he learns that the Baron estate, he learns where it is, but that it is highly guarded. So he achieved the objective. Now we need a new short-term objective that still goes in the same direction.
Yeah, so Otis's second short-term objective could be something along the lines of how to get into the estate or to get the plans of the estate. And a couple of games later, he defeats some minions, interrogates a few people, and finds out that there's going to be a charity party happening in a couple of weeks. Now's his chance.
After each of these short-term objectives, it's a great opportunity for you to actually have reflection on what's going on. So a good thing is, let's say you learn that this is the charity party. Okay, it's a charity party. What's happening there? Maybe Otis has feelings about it. Well, to level up your game, this is where you really want to express any doubt or any inner thoughts you have through role play with the other players. And you can, like we said about how to role play in previous video, you can orchestrate this by talking out of game with other players, being like, you should ask me this. And as you get better, it's going to be a lot more easier. All of that we talk about in our pufferfish moments. So if you haven't seen it, look it up. It's a weird name, but it's a very interesting concept. So highly encourage you to look it up. It's going to help your role play a lot.
Yeah. So, and like Chris mentioned, this is kind of your next step in the process of creating objectives, is to reassess your long-term objective as you progress towards it. So after each short-term objective, we suggest that you consider the information that you've been given and think about it. Does it change your opinion? Does your character change a little bit as they move along? Do things like your background, your bonds, your flaws, your other details in the personality of your character, do they get put into question based on the way you react to this information and to the direction you choose to take? And obviously, again, you're going to want to do this information sharing and consideration with your game master. Don't go changing your flaw without mentioning it to your game master first.
Yeah, but you can change your flaw, your bond, or stuff like that. This is not static, so feel free to bring it up with your game master. So let's go back to our example. Otis maybe has a third short term, which is get an invitation to this party and kind of a cover story to get inside the walls of the estate.
As you dig around and poke through the town, Otis learns that the party is actually to raise money for the war effort. And people that are invited to the party actually think the Baron is a really nice guy.
Yeah, now you're kind of stuck, right? Maybe your objective of killing that guy is no longer valid, and you should, again, show this evolution through role play as much as possible and through your action. And maybe you set up a new long-term objective, which is not to kill him anymore, but just to make him pay. Maybe make him lose some status, maybe lose some money, just to get a little vengeance, but killing is no longer on the table.
You're going to set your new goal to be, let's get dirt on this Baron. Let's find a way to leverage information. So in the party, you're poking around, you maybe sneak off to the Baron's office to look for information. And in here, you see transactions, you see letters proving that the Baron's actually donating a whole bunch of money to the local church. The same church that the cleric in your party is affiliated with.
And now you should really talk about it. The cleric story will be tied to yours. And from that information, maybe your long-term does not apply anymore and you need to find a new one. Maybe you want to work with a Baron. We don't know, depending on what the details of the story here. But the thing is, this could be the end of an arc. The arc of vengeance becomes, you know what? Maybe revenge, like killing, is not a good thing because I just found out that I would have made a mistake killing that guy. So maybe you restart at the first step of fixing a new long-term.
And something that's important to note here is this setting of objectives isn't intended to be a scripting of your character's actions. It's only a direction you're taking, and you're making sure that you're remaining open to evolving and changing it as you go. It's probably the biggest takeaway you can take from all of this. Something you can also consider here, we kind of mentioned it a little bit with the cleric, is you're going to want to consider the other players in the game, the other characters that are part of your party when you're setting up and making your decisions along the way. As you evolve your character, as you evolve and vocalize the inner monologues and thinkings that your character is expressing, obviously there's going to be some reactions from the other members in the group.
When you consider the party and how they're going to relate to your story, make sure these objectives are not in a position in the sense that they will cause conflict to a point where they'll be like infighting or something like that, right? So whenever you reach kind of the end of an arc like this, you want to build another new long-term objective. So the first step is think of a long-term. Then the second step is break it down into short terms. The third step is that all along the way, whenever there's events, maybe every time you finish a short-term objective for sure, but maybe even other events, you need to reassess your long-term and maybe tweak it, or if you see that it doesn't apply anymore, you can change it altogether. And the fourth step would be when you complete this long term, you want to figure out how it's going to change your character, really show an evolution of reaching the end of a long term. Mm-hmm. And the fifth one is kind of done throughout, is consider the party when you set these objectives for yourself.
Now, I know when I do this, for my characters, all I want to do is play. I want to like immediately play, text all my friends and be like, okay guys, let's move the next game up. But you can't always do that. And the reason I get so excited is because it's a fantastic source of inspiration for scenes, role play scenes with other characters. And a good way to get a really concentrated dose of roleplay scenes with your other fellow players and your game master is to do the improv game that we set out last time. So if you are interested in doing a very concentrated dose of improv and roleplay, I suggest you check it out. I'll link it up here. It's a great way to really practice the roleplay so that when you come back to the real campaign, you're all oiled up and ready.
Especially with the situation right now, it can give you possibility to play with the distance without necessarily having to go on Roll20 and figure all this thing out. Another thing maybe just to mention to wrap it up is that those objectives, since they're a source for role play for you, the other character's objective are also a good opportunity to role play. So if they are explicit, use them to start scene and fuel your role play. And you can see right away that we're laying out the foundation for a lot of advanced role play tips. So on this channel, we will visit subject like preluding, motivation role play, gift giving a little bit more in detail. So if you wanted tips on that, again, subscribe and click the bell.
I hope this gave you inspiration for some objectives for your characters. If you have one, an interesting one that you want to share with us, we recommend you comment down below. Reach out to us on Twitter. That's at role_play_chat.
Or we have an email that's contactroleplaychat@gmail.com.
So as much as we could sit here all day to talk about objectives, I think we're going to have to cose the show. Right, Chris?
Right, man.
Let's call it a chat.